my powerful posse, and welcome back to Purple RX. It is Renata, your friendly and resourceful PharmD. For any of you that don't know, you know what this channel is about, to help you navigate this health and wellness world where everybody's telling you sodium's bad for you, you shouldn't have this is great for you, this is what you need, when really and truly only you can figure out what exactly is going to work for you. And I'm here to help you, just guide you through that and navigate. So, you know, I've been talking about Mondays are Mineral Mondays. People are probably like, what is she talking about minerals for? Look, I love this human body, this machine. Maybe it was the whole transplant that got me, but I really love this machine, this whole thing that we're in and that God has given us. And it is important that we know how it works, what's included in it, and where we can get the nutrients and important things that we need. There's a lot of people out there telling you don't need this, you need that, this is the most important, this is not the most important, and maybe you could just be with an imbalance of something. So I want you to know what's really important to your body and how to look at it, and even supplementation and what looks best, what doesn't look best. Look, everybody is not for everything, and everything is not for everybody, and I'm not here to tell everybody exactly what they need to do for themselves, because that is part of the plan for you to figure out. I want you to be knowing your own body and knowing the basics of how the human body works, so that when you come upon something, you can actually work with your healthcare professional, not solely rely on them just for everything, and being okay with listening to your body and being and have an understanding of knowing how it's working and operating. And I'm not talking about serious details. That's not for you to know. That's for me and other healthcare professionals like me to know. So please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, put this out there. I want as many people to know and have fun with their bodies and love their bodies in all aspects, so that we can be a healthier nation. We can be a healthier group of people that are aware of what is going on with us. Because when you start there, you'll start having more awareness in how you think, how you feel, and how you understand things, which is going to take you to a whole nother level in life. So today's mineral is going to be calcium. And I know you're like, calcium's everywhere. I can get it in milk. I can get it in this. Well, let's talk a little bit about calcium. Calcium is one of the most abundant minerals within the body. So it is required for vascular contraction and vasodilation. So basically the smooth muscle that is around your blood vessels, for that to expand and contract and pump and move that blood. Also muscle contraction, every other muscle contraction. Muscles in your legs, muscles in your heart, muscles all over your body, and the nerve transmission that's needed to help that muscle contraction. So basically what happens is a nerve stimulates a muscle and the body releases calcium. So then calcium helps proteins in the muscle to carry out the contraction. And then calcium is released out of that cell so that the muscle can relax. So calcium is a part of that muscle contraction. Or if you get spasms, I don't know. My sound effects aren't really great right now. But anyway, it's also a part in hormonal secretion, blood clotting, intracellular signaling, basically where your cell is responding to its environment. So your cell is able to respond back, whether good or bad, or whether this is right or not, to whatever is going on within its environment. It's also really a part of, because this is what we hear, we think it's only for bone. Like with bone resorption, constant resorption and deposition of calcium is a part of making new bone. So basically resorption is when the bone is breaking down so that it can form new bone, and then calcium is released there and deposited into the area of the new bone. So 1%, only 1% of the calcium that we have in our bodies is in bone tissue, is like reserved in our bone tissue and in our serum calcium. So that's where you're going to see most of it. And that's where we get the main calcium source that's going to be needed for these other nerve functions. That 1% is going to be through the blood and through that bone tissue reservoir. Now, the other 99% is going to be stored within your bones. So your bone has to be broken down in order to get that, or within your teeth. And in order to get that calcium, it has to be broken down, but you don't really want your teeth to be broken down. So think about this. If you don't have enough calcium or you're low on calcium, that can result in tooth decay, brittle teeth, irritated gums, also weak, like your tooth, basically the root of your tooth is going to start being weak. So those are things that it's so important that we have enough calcium within our body. And vitamin D is also needed to help with the absorption of calcium. So that's why a lot of times they'll say, oh, you need calcium with vitamin D, these things, because it helps with the absorption and movement of calcium and allowing it to be absorbed properly and broken down within your body. So it has been said, and there's been plenty of studies that have seen that enough calcium allows for a lower risk in blood pressure in pregnancy. Also, for if the fetus is getting enough calcium because of the mother, they're most likely to have, be at a lower risk of blood pressure, have increased cholesterol values, let me clear that up. Not increased cholesterol values. With enough calcium, you have an improved outcome of better cholesterol values, and you decrease a risk of colorectal adenomas, which is basically like a non-cancerous tumor. But cancerous, non-cancerous tumors are not fun. Tumors can, whether they're benign or malignant, meaning causing cancer or actively causing something, or they're just a lump there, they can be inconvenient, make things harder, make things rougher, because if it's just a tumor and it's not doing anything, it's growing and moving things out of the way and allowing certain things not to happen directly or indirectly. So who are the people and what conditions or lifestyles would bring about a decreased amount of calcium? And one more thing I forgot. Also with calcium, if there's not enough calcium within the bones, if there's not enough calcium, period, within your blood serum or your body that is needed, and it's not enough in the reservoir, then it's going to start breaking down bones. And when you start breaking down your bones and taking calcium from there, it makes them weak and porous and they have holes in them. So it's easier for your bones to break. So calcium is very important in your bone health, your bone structure, as well as a part of the bone density. So let's talk about conditions and lifestyles that allow for people to have lower calciums and where there may be a problem with that. They don't get enough calcium. So things like people with eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, those can bring about situations as to where somebody's not getting enough calcium because when they're not getting enough nutrients or they're losing all their nutrients, or in situations such as long-term laxative use because you're excreting so much out. Digestive disorders. Digestive disorders, because a lot of times in digestive disorders there's poor absorption or malabsorption, malnutrition. Some things just aren't absorbing in the right place, or they bypass some place where they really need to be absorbed. So that's where you get into issues of things like that. If you have high consumption of caffeine, soda, alcohol, a lot of those, because a lot of those are taking the place and are in the way of actually your calcium and those nutrients and minerals getting absorbed. Think about too much caffeine. Too much caffeine is taking up the time and taking up the space within the liver and within the body to break down those minerals and use that, just like in alcohol. And soda, just basically the same thing. All the sugar and all that goes into it, your body's having to break down those chemicals, those sugars, all of those things that come into making that soda that you just love, and allowing it to not allow anything to absorb properly and take the place of some nutrients. Also in people that don't really, let me not say, it's called amenorrhea, when you don't have a period, and that could be from anorexia, or that could be from excessive exercise. Usually people that are training for marathons, not regular marathons, but like a triathlete, stuff like that, or Olympics in certain areas, a lot of times they lose that their period, or their period becomes less and less and less. And sometimes with that, you can have an issue with calcium being absorbed or calcium being released in them not getting enough calcium, because a lot of times there's decreased estrogen. And when there's decreased estrogen You'll find out later. I'll talk about that later when there's decreased estrogen. And it just allows for a poor balance in circulating and in the calcium circulating. Kidney failure, people with pancreatitis, people with a lack of parathyroid, so their thyroid is not acting as not their parathyroid pituitary gland is not working at its best. Some cancers, people that are taking prolonged chemo meds and steroids are taking the place and messing messing with absorption as well as function of some of the calcium. Now, within that does not mean it's going to be end all be all. If you have this is exactly how it's going to go. Remember, everybody's different. Sometimes some people have one situation and they may not have enough, or they have all these situations just based off the disease. And if you're dealing with these diseases, most likely you are dealing with a doctor. You are dealing with a healthcare professional. And if you're not, I ask that you go get help from somebody to help you recover, whether it is some kind of eating disorder, whether it is an improper use of laxatives because you feel laxatives are going to keep you thin and keep. Please don't go that route. Please find somebody to help you get through that route, because those situations are very hard and those situations are very concerning for your body and the minerals and nutrients it needs, and your body is important to you. We all need these bodies. These bodies allow us to, when they're in a balanced way, allow us to be at our best, think at our best, give what is needed to the people around us, to the world. Those are all important things, and allow us to, when we're functioning at our best, our brain is going to work a whole lot easier. Our organs are going to work. Our digestive system, our body is a whole system, and when one part is broken, the other parts sometimes feel it or make up for that. And I'm not even going to say broken, in not functioning as it should. So in conditions like that where there's low calcium, there's also other conditions where calcium is really going to be needed in postmenopausal women. So if you're postmenopausal, maybe even sometimes perimenopausal, but mainly postmenopausal, which is going to turn into, there is a higher risk for osteoporosis, because when you're postmenopausal, there is a decrease in bone reabsorption, which means that is the breakdown of the bone. So your bone is breaking down more, and then you're decreasing your calcium absorption, so your body's not absorbing as much calcium as it needs. So it's breaking down your bone a whole lot quicker than it's rebuilding it, and then you're not even getting enough calcium to help in that rebuilding and help in the absorption to help for that process and at least pump up that process. So that's why a lot of those women are more at risk for osteoporosis or any other bone diseases, due to that. As you go through postmenopausal, you're going to have that. If you don't have that estrogen can mess with how bone is forming or breaking down, and whether you're getting a calcium absorption or not. So with all of these, we always think, how can we get calcium? How can we get what is needed that we're losing? So let's look at this. A lot of foods, green leafy vegetables are great sources of calcium. Now, the one thing with green leafy vegetables you may have to worry about is there is an increased amount of oxalic acid. So when you have an increased amount of oxalic acid, your body has a decreased ability to absorb that calcium. So green leafy vegetables are great, but we also need other sources, which is why America fortified. They have fortified cereals, fruit juices, non-dairy milks are fortified, all with calcium. Certain cereals that you get off the shelf, they'll have calcium in it. Orange juice has been fortified with calcium, especially if you're not getting fresh squeezed orange juice. If you're getting those Tropicana, Floridazone, Simply, most of those, according to the guidelines, most of them are fortified with calcium. Yogurt, cheese, milk, tofu, so legumes and grains, salmon, sardines, those are all good sources of calcium. Nuts, seeds, milk and dairy products are probably your best bet. They're the highest, but if you're eating enough leafy greens and legumes and other things and nuts and seeds, you will get the calcium you need, so there is no worry. Such as almonds are a great source of calcium, chia seeds, sesame seeds, and also cornmeal. So cornmeal and corn tortillas, if you love that, and if you're a vegan and you find a check it out. There are always other options. They want to make you think that there aren't any other options depending on which diet you have, how you live, what you're eating, where you're going, but there's calcium at just about at every turn if you can within your food. Now, say you're still not getting enough within your food. There's also supplementation. I don't suggest supplementation unless your healthcare professional or whoever you're talking to, whoever you're dealing with, has said you probably need more. You need more calcium. I see it within this that you need more calcium within your labs, within whatever's going on with you. You need more calcium. So you go and look at the store. Most times you're asking me, a pharmacist, or you're asking your doctor, and your doctor may know, or your doctor may not know. So in calcium supplementation, you can either, in a lot of supplementation, especially with minerals, you're either going to find elemental, which is the more mineral form. Elemental calcium is the more mineral form. And then there's natural calcium, which exists with other compounds. So you won't just get calcium. You may get calcium and vitamin D, but other compounds along with that. Zinc, a lot of the other compounds that make up that kind of calcium. So one that is the most common is calcium carbonate. So that has 40% of elemental calcium, which is the mineral calcium, and it's cheap. It's the one that most doctors or most people, if they're going to say get some calcium, this is the one we want you to get. And and this has to be taken with food. In order for the best absorption, this needs to be taken with a meal so that it can be absorbed properly. If not, then you won't get full absorption and you'll miss out the benefits of the full calcium that you need. And you may have to end up taking more, which you don't want to take more than you have to, because then you can get into high calcium levels or get into a situation where your body is doing a lot to get rid of it. So then there's also calcium lactate. That has about 30% of elemental calcium. And there's also calcium gluconate, which has about 9% of the elemental calcium. And then the other natural kind that is mixed with other compounds. You won't see a lot of that, and you won't get a lot of suggestions off that from doctors or from a lot of nurses or doctors, healthcare professionals, however you look. Then there's also calcium citrate. So calcium carbonate and calcium citrate are probably going to be your top two that will be suggested or recommended for you. And calcium citrate has 21% of the elemental form of calcium. And you can take that with or without food. And it's usually useful for those that have an irritable bowel disease. So you have irritable bowel disease, which means you have a problem with absorbing things fully. It either passes too quickly, so you don't get your full nutrients, or something else is going on. But for the most part, you are not able to absorb properly, excuse me. Also, those people with, achlorhydria, basically they don't have any hydrochloride in their gastric system. So there's no hydrochloric acid within their stomach to break down things that are needed. So calcium citrate is a good form for those people, as well as people with other poor absorption disorders. Calcium citrate is going to be your best bet because it allows the most to get absorbed, and to get absorbed that those with a malabsorption have a problem with. So most of the time the side effects you might get are gas, bloating, constipation, and usually we can relieve those with either adding food, eating them with food. That means you might need to eat them with food, or you might need to spread out your dosages. Maybe not take one high dose during the day, maybe take it one with every meal, a lower dose. Instead of taking 500 milligrams at one time, taking 100, or 300 milligrams at one time, taking 100 breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Those are easier elements to look at. Those are things to really think about if you're getting gas, bloating, and constipation. And give yourself a second, because sometimes when you initially start things, you may get gas, bloating, or constipation, or that just may be your body doing that right now. Because I know mine, I've had to regulate some things and change some things. So you got your calcium supplementation, and you may fall into a situation where you're taking other meds. So in a situation, calcium these are the main ones that you're going to come into because a lot of people take them. So blood pressure meds such as calcium channel blockers or antibiotics like quinolones, those are going to have an interaction with calcium. So a lot of times calcium decreases the effects of antibiotics and calcium channel blockers. And a lot of times, a lot of people, if you had an overdose of calcium channel blockers, they would probably give you IV calcium so that they could get rid of the overdose of calcium channel blockers. So you want to be aware of those things, want to be aware of what is it interacting with and what it can hinder. So if you're taking antibiotics, either for the calcium, you don't want to take it at the same time that you eat it. So probably 2 hours before and 4 to 6 hours after. And even with calcium channel blockers, you may not want to, you really want to talk to your cardiologist or general practitioner about how much calcium you really need, and if maybe you need to reduce the calcium channel blockers and finding a different blood pressure medication that will work for you. So if you come into high calcium levels, a lot of times high calcium levels are going to come from either disease state or from you trying to take so much calcium to replenish what you have or to replenish what you feel you've lost. So in that aspect, your best bet, what you may come into with high levels, you're going to end up having calcium, like kidney stones. A lot of people get calcium deposits and have those kidney stones because the kidney stones are calcium and salt deposits. And not so much salt because salt dissolves better, but if it's a high amount of calcium deposits is what you're going to get for a lot of people. More problems with constipation, and also calcification of the soft tissue in the blood vessels. But that would take you actually going to the hospital, and the hospital seeing those calcifications of those arteries and of those blood vessels. So this was just, like I said, a quick little get into. Actually, it wasn't quick. It's been 20 some odd minutes. So you know how I roll. I'm just here to give you the information. I want everybody to be happy, be healthy, and be at their best, because I promise you it changes your life. Because I have been down. I have been imbalanced within my body, even not including a transplant. And having that feeling it's not easy, and it's not fun, because your brain isn't at its best. You're all over the place. You're tired. You're fatigued. You're hurting. You're wore out. And you just want to live life. So I want you to live the best life you can live. Do you, be you, and have this information so that it can be a guiding tool for you to find out where you need to go in your journey and how you need to look at things. And just remember that I know if this is boring, that's okay. But this is information that is so pertinent for you and so pertinent for your body. And I love you guys. And that's what's so important to me. And that's what's and you guys are very important to me. Excuse me. So your health is your wealth. So like I said, everything is not for everybody and everybody's not for everything. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me what you want to talk about. I'll talk about anything. Just about. Don't get too deep, but I can talk about just about anything. So thank you guys. You guys have a nice evening.